Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Alumni Cocktails and Conversations with the Dean, a part of the Mason Arts at Home digital broadcasting service. I am that Dean, Rick Davis of the College of Visual and Performing Arts at George Mason University, and it's been a real thrill all year to engage in these wonderful conversations with distinguished alumni and alumnae of George Mason University's College of Visual and Performing Arts from across the disciplines and indeed, in some cases, from around the world. Tonight, we have a wonderful panel of artist educators, and that is a very resonant theme in the world today, as indeed it always has been, but particularly with the challenges that we are all facing as artists and as educators today. Just to reflect for a moment on the anniversary almost of the beginning of Mason Arts at Home. We had our first broadcast on April 2nd, 2020, just a couple of weeks after the pandemic shutdowns began to take effect. And George Mason was in the process of moving all of its instruction online, and the performing arts centers and galleries were shut down. And we thought to ourselves, we need to keep working, and we need to make sure that our staff keeps working, and we need, perhaps just as importantly, to connect with you, with our audience, and let you know that we are never stopping the work that we do. And so Mason Arts at Home was born, and it's been a multimodal success, showcasing all disciplines and a variety of different kinds of content, of which this series is one. We have a terrific panel tonight. Three graduates, one from the School of Art and two from the School of Dance, and they've all pursued very different careers, which I think is one of the hallmarks of a great education and a great person. Great education in the arts, when it's married to a great person, equips you to do anything at all in the world. And you'll see a little bit of that ingenuity on display, and flexibility and creativity on display tonight. I'm very pleased to welcome Maria Kutsukraya Burke, who is an art and design educator, the founder of Emergent Design Studio, and an art teacher at Yorktown High School in Arlington, Virginia. And also Jordan Doherty, who is a dance instructor at Center City Public Charter Schools in Washington, D.C., and Jennifer Tsukayama, who is the Vice President for Arts Education at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center in Newark, New Jersey. Welcome all to Cocktails and Conversations. It's so very, very great to see you all. Say hello.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
This program
Nice
is one step better than Zoom in that we can all talk at once and we can all hear each other. So that's that's actually pretty cool. It's so nice of you to join us tonight for this conversation and to connect with our broader community, which indeed is turning out to be international for this program. The way the program is going to run is we're going to speak with each of these artist educators one at a time for a few minutes, look at a little bit of their work, talk about their lives and careers at Mason and beyond. And then while we're talking to one, the other two are waiting in our luxurious green room where they are attended to by staff, bringing them everything they could possibly want. And then we bring the next person into the studio and so on. And then at the after that process is done, we'll bring all three artist educators back on screen and we'll have a roundtable discussion, during which time you are highly encouraged to post questions in whatever chat feature your social media or your YouTube channel that you're watching us on provides you with. And we will make an attempt to get to as many of those questions as possible. So sit back and relax, as they say on the airlines. Nobody's flying, but if we were flying, that's what they would say. And now I would like to start the deliberations with Maria Kutsukraya Burke. You can hang out, and we'll see the other two in a little bit.
It's such an honor to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. I want to hear a little bit about you first, and then I want you to walk us through these three images. We'll kind of let them live on the screen for a little while we hear a little bit about your career, both at Mason and beyond. Just a couple of key points, and then because these images are fantastic, and I want to make sure we get to spend time with them a little bit.
Okay.
So tell us
I'm
your story.
originally from Roanoke, Virginia, and I graduated from the MAT in art education program at Mason in 2009. I taught elementary art school, elementary art classes for 10 years in Arlington Public Schools. And that included 4 years at Discovery Elementary School, which is a net zero energy school in Arlington. So I was there, and sustainability and design thinking really became an interest of mine to combine with the arts. And in 2019, I decided to take a year adventure at Whittle School and Studios, which is an international school. They have a campus in DC and a campus in Shenzhen, China. So after a year there, unfortunately, the pandemic hit, and the financial viability of the school was not known, and so I decided to jump back to Arlington. And now I'm teaching at Yorktown High School, computer graphics and photo. And to keep my interest in progressive education and design thinking, Reggio Emilia philosophy, project-based learning, all of that going, I decided to start a company in September. And I started the company Emergent Design Studio, and I've been teaching it out of my backyard and house in small pods, where students can solve real world scenarios that are design thinking problems based on solving the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And they get to meet real experts in the design world, whether it's a landscape architect, an architect, an industrial designer, any kind of designer. I'll connect them to get real world feedback on their work.
That sounds fantastic. It also sounds like a perfect segue to walking us through some of these images, because this looks like a design thinking challenge that's all laid out for us.
It is. And I wanted to show you some of the process. So at Discovery, and these images are from Discovery Elementary, we started with the iteration stage and research stage. Students had to iterate their ideas and then give each other feedback. This shows that they are thinking about multiple sides. And this challenge in particular was a seat design challenge that was held in 2017. And the students needed to research the spaces in the school and see what was missing. And they designed their own idea of what that seat would be. And then the next stage was we iterated in multiple media, including paper, but we also iterated in Tinkercad and then 3D printed their models. And so you can see the students doing that here. So that was another stage of the process. The students also prototyped with the designers there. So we had designers who had designed some of the furniture that was at Discovery. They came and we all worked together to have the students build prototypes that were small models of what their seat was going to be. The students then pitched their ideas and to the whole 125 fifth graders and voted on which seat was going to be the new seat that we would build for real at Discovery. And so we did. We got a visiting artist in and we built the new seat that was chosen.
Oh, that sounds absolutely fantastic. I imagine when you bring, whether it's at the school or at Emergent Design, when you bring these professional artists and craftspeople in, they probably have a great time as much as the students do.
They do, and they love sharing their skills and giving the students feedback. And it creates a synergy and excitement to have to really learn about sustainable design, to think about their process and the materials they use, and very similar to what we're using. So it's exciting to know the students are really excited to know that they're creating something that would be the same way a designer would.
And the thing that really also is so apparent here and just really speaks to me is the collaborative aspect of this. These are folks working in teams, solving problems together, kicking ideas around. What a great metaphor for making progress in the world.
Correct, and a good skill to have, for
yeah,
certain.
Absolutely.
So
well, That was fantastic. I look forward to. We're gonna let you go back to our luxurious green room now for a
Thank
few
you.
minutes. But thank you for sharing that story, and we will come back to you in just a little bit. Our next guest in the studio is going to be Jordan Doherty, who is the dance instructor at Center City Public Charter Schools and a proud dance alum of George Mason University. And Jordan, welcome. It's great to see you. And
Hi,
we have some
thank you.
beautiful images and video, some of which has a Mason flavor to it, but there's some stuff from your professional career as well that we'd love to show. So let's roll that little minute or so of tape, and after we're done, you can tell us about it. I sure recognize that image. Beautiful. That's such a beautiful piece. Tell us. Let's start at the end and kind of work back just for a second. Dayton Contemporary Dance, of course, is a major American dance company, and there you were on stage. Tell us a little bit about that piece and how you found your way there.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here and thank you
Hmm.
for having me tonight. I was in the second company of the Dayton Contemporary Dance Company in Dayton, Ohio, for 3 years. That piece that you saw there was called This Too Shall Pass and it was choreographed by Demetrius Tabron. And from that was right after college. And then since then, I've also danced for DC Contemporary Dance Theater here in Washington, DC. And then I've also done work with Rockville Musical Theater.
Fantastic. So, how do you keep DC and DC straight? You get two companies with exactly the same.
Sometimes it gets a little tricky with all the C's and the D's.
And it's incredible work. How did you find your way into teaching dance and especially in this environment? I want you to talk to us a little bit about these wonderful pictures that we're seeing with with a celebrity host there, and also with your students in the studio. How
Well,
did you become a teacher?
I started teaching dance at a young age at my home studio in Louisville, Kentucky. I
Hmm.
worked for Ellen Edwards. She owned Ellen School of Dance. And as many young dancers, you start out as a demonstrator, and then you find that you also have the love and the passion for passing on what gives you so much joy. And then I went to a performing arts high school in Louisville, Kentucky. I went to the Youth Performing Arts High School. And while I was there, and then in my last year at George Mason, when we take a senior synthesis class, they help you to find other ways that your degree can be used. So, like, there's performance, there's a choreographer, there's instructor. And I just found a knack for working with children and teaching them how to use dance to problem solve and to be creative.
Oh, that's fantastic. I want to hear about these pictures, but you mentioned dance and problem solving, and I have Maria's example in mind and your example in mind. When I tell a very quick story, I was at dinner a few years ago with a gentleman who worked for the CIA, and he said that he had a group of his folks, agents, I guess they're called, in a room, and they were trying to figure out some big international problem, and they couldn't do it. So he said, "We're going to dance about it." And this took me back completely by surprise because I didn't know this person had any arts interest at all. He said, but they figured out how to do a dance improv about some international thing at the sea, and he said it really helped. So problem solving, man, that's pretty cool. So
Yes.
I don't that came out of
this
left field,
whole
but
this whole year, I think, has been problem solving at its finest, if we can
yeah,
say
and
anything about the pandemic.
yeah, and I mean, just the image of that beautiful circle on our screen as you're seeing, the students and you, I guess, and other adults in a what a there's something about people holding hands in a circle that's just instantly community building and inspiring. Tell us about that moment.
So here, my students and I started a ballet club at the school that I was running with pre-K 3, so the 3-year-olds all the way up into the 8th graders. Twice a week, I would have the younger kids on one, and then the slightly older kids, they're still young as well, on the other day. And the Washington, DC news station, WUSA 9, they saw me post a picture I had of my ballet club one day. I was just really proud, and they featured me on the news as a neighborhood hero. And then here they connected us to the
Oh,
Washington Ballet, and we got to go to the Washington Ballet and have our own just like ballet day with one of their principal
wow.
ballerinas.
Oh, that must have been so inspiring. And then
It
and
was
then
a
speaking
really
of
cool.
speaking of television, let's turn our attention over here to the big screen and what's going on here.
The story that was featured on WUSA 9 was then picked up and seen by a producer, I think on the Steve Harvey show, and they reached out and asked if they could then do a feature. They just thought it was a great opportunity to feature a teacher who does this after school, and it's just doing it for the fun and to serve as representation for her students when they don't see a lot of representation, people
Yeah,
that look like them.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's such a big theme in all the arts, but I think ballet is something that's been grappling a form that's been grappling with that very very publicly and very visibly these last few years, especially. So, congratulations, that's pretty amazing. What's your time for about one more question while we're here? What's your day like as a dance teacher in a charter school?
I
How does I
start
mean what?
out, um, well, I normally teach anywhere between 4 and 5 classes during the day. Between the whole week, I will see the entire school, everyone from
Wow.
pre-K 3 up to 8th grade. It
Oh,
is
that's
a
phenomenal.
lot of it's a lot of switching. I can have right now my day consists of the 8th graders at like 10 in the morning, and then by late afternoon I have already had third, first, pre-K 4, and then that'll be my whole day for just a Monday, and then Tuesday my
Wow.
schedule switches again.
Wow. I think it's just incredible that you get to see every student in the school. I think that's a great gift to them and a testament to your resilience and flexibility and energy and skill. That's amazing. All right. Thank you so much. We're going to move you back to the green room where, it's all on the house in there. And then next, we're going to talk to Jennifer, and we'll see you in a little bit, Jordan. Jennifer Tsukiyama, welcome to our studio. And I so much to talk about, but I want to, before we do anything else, I want to have you walk us through these extraordinary images that are representative of your work as a visual artist, dancer, choreographer, everything.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's really a great privilege.
Sure.
Um, and so the sort of little long piece there with a single dancer is a work that is called Memory Traces, and it's a collaboration with a poet and a motion capture person, engineer. And what we did was mirror the images of dementia and Alzheimer's. And as the dancer moved throughout the space, it was real-time capture of her images. And as the poem also talks about the deterioration of the mind, so did the images of the dancer. And as you'll see in the back, those images, they start to distort as you come in and out of real time and not. And it was a really lovely experience to collaborate with those other artists. And I'm grateful for that experience. And it was really, it's quite timely, as of course, dementia and Alzheimer's are key. Demographic that's
really,
increasing.
Really striking images. Before we move on from this, can I ask, so is this a full stage perspective, or is this a series of images stitched together?
Series of images stitched together, yeah. Mm-hmm. So the whole stage is a solo work. Yeah.
Gotcha. We're seeing moments that are evolving, and we can see the deterioration in the background so clearly. Really stunning. Where was this work presented?
This was when I was teaching at Arizona State University. Some of my research was in performance technology, but also community embedded practices. And so we did work with K through 12 schools as well. So, but this was with technology and performance and how that might happen, triggering with cameras and images in real time, and how that could be reflected on the space to continue the narrative of what the choreography was about.
Beautiful. Yeah. Now, for something that also has a technological flair, but has a completely different vibe, tell us about this, this big green installation.
Yeah, so this was a piece, an evening length work called Paper Interiors, and there are quite a few people involved in this. Sound engineers, video engineers, bio-life scientists, costume designers, image capture, and this was started with the images that are projected are handmade paper from organic fibers, and then by Jean Valentine. And my partner in life sciences at the university, CJ Kozelik, he took his confocal microscope and then blew up the images of that handmade paper, and then turned it into 3D images. And then I said, wow, let's project that into film and project that into a space. And the costume designers saw this and said, let's make costumes. So we all came together, including some engineers, and trained how to figure out how to make robotic lights, and projected and made a whole evening work about paper fibers and paper interiors. And the audience wore 3D glasses. So the images are actually 3D. So you wore 3D glasses. Yeah. Wow. And then because dance is so ephemeral, I thought, how can we make this last longer? So we created an immersive installation that was geared for children. So children would, go into a museum and put on their 3D glasses, walk into this space of the projected images, and we had fabric hanging so they have a tactile experience with it, and manipulate the images and dancers that were also projected in the space. Yeah.
That sounds phenomenal. Wow.
It was good. It was fun. It was really fun.
Thank you for making that, but also for explaining it so well. Tell us a little bit about your quick journey from George Mason University to New Jersey. I mean, it's not so long geographically, but there's a lot of twists and turns on the road.
Yes, that is short. Nothing's linear, right? So from Mason, of which I had a really great education, so thank you to the faculty and the dean there, and I appreciate that. And from there, after I left, I was dancing professionally, went up to New York, did the gig around, traveled many tours, that thing. Then went to grad school, then went from there, started my own company with a partner there, then did many tours there, and then started working with Ailey because I had to pay some bills. So I started working at Ailey before they had the beautiful building. Then moved to Arizona, was recruited out to Arizona to be faculty there. And from there, was then recruited out of that space to the state policy. So I became the director of strategic partnerships and managed the grants and portfolio of arts grants coming out of the Arts Commission there. And then headed back east, and now I'm in Jersey.
Wow, that is decidedly nonlinear, but there's also kind of an internal logic to it.
Sure.
Moving from artistic creation to the support of artistic creation, and now in your role as the VP for Education, making sure that art is available and accessible and understandable. Give us one or two examples of the kind of work that NJPAC is doing in the education space.
Sure. One of the key components, there are a couple. I'll talk specifically of two. One is to remove as many barriers as possible to participation, right? We know the arts are critical to deeper civic engagement, addresses social emotional learning, also the multiple learners and the different intelligences. So we try and access as many different ways as possible. So that includes cost and language and just entry points, right? The other is also give the space for the kids to talk and make work that's important to them in the way that they want to make it. So often we'll do work that's devised, either it's theater. So the main areas in which my department of hip hop and all the 5 elements, theater, musical theater, and jazz. And those are the most key components. And we also create space where the students get to make work. So for example, they'll write their own musical, they'll write their own play. We've created another class this year, particularly because of the multiple pandemics, called In the Mix, where the students it's totally student driven, totally student centered, and they use their forms, whichever kids show up, to have artivism and talk about social justice, economic justice, racial justice, gender justice, and they're going to make work however that's going to come out. So it's not set to the confines of any one genre. So if they want to say something, then they can say it in a way that it's supposed to be expressed. So it really makes space for students to talk about what's important to them and to say it in the way they want to say it. And it's key. It's very key to what we do. Students don't get that space and that brave space often.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. The difference between, or the synergy between seeing wonderful art as we are seeing on our screen, but also then being empowered to make it, being empowered to try things, and to have both support and is there an audience involved in the work that gets made in some of these settings, or how do you negotiate that fine line
with the kids?
Yeah,
with this.
Yeah.
Well, generally the audience isn't involved, except what's been really great with being everything virtual on Zoom is the chat just fires up,
yeah, there we go.
the support and the love
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the hoorays that you would, it is in that space really interactive. I am hoping
Yeah.
as we move forward to find ways in which we can engage and, break that proscenium wall, that fourth wall in many, many different iterations. I think there's real possibilities for that. So I'm excited. We'll see what we come up with. I
Yeah.
think Jordan said it earlier, create problem solving, right? I think
Yeah,
she
totally.
framed that nicely.
Yeah, you took my question one step further, and I'm glad you did, because I was initially just thinking more prosaically that is this work that is created and seen by anybody, but it obviously is, and it not only is seen but responded to and engaged with, and I want to actually at this point I want to bring our entire group back on screen, because I think we have things to talk about with each other. Hello again, welcome. One of the ground rules of our little setting here is that we can talk to each other also. I don't have to do all the talking or all the questioning. So if at any point one of the panelists would like to engage with another panelist, you certainly may feel free to do so. And I would love that, because what I'm sensing from all three of you is some really interesting common energy and common goals and even some techniques that are shared. So I thought I would make that invitation very clear. And of course, I want to invite our audience listening to post questions for us as well. And we will get to those when the time comes. One of the things I'd like to hear, I think some of you have started to address it, certainly, but it is inevitable on this approximately 1 year anniversary of the great shutdowns, just to talk a little bit more about how your own work has been affected by that and how you have responded to it in the work that you do in your professional settings. So, um, just for fun, we'll go in the same order that we started with, but we won't always stick to that. So, Maria, you're first.
Sure. So I was at Whittle when the pandemic hit, and we shut down the school on March 13th in school learning. So we were teaching asynchronously. I'm sorry, we were teaching synchronously live right away the next week. And I actually held a live design challenge, design for play pitch with experts, visiting experts online for 100 people, nearly 100 people. So that was very exciting. And so we just kept moving forward. Then I switched to the public school, and I've been teaching. Synchronously all year until March 2nd. And on March 2nd, we went back, and I've been teaching the hybrid or concurrent learning. I have a number of students that are in the room with me and a number that are online. So I've been doing that for about 3 weeks. It's so good to be out of my house to teach. And having Emergent Design Studio as my after school program was such a gift to me, because it gave me a way to teach in person in small pods and stand up teaching like I love to do. So I'm so happy to be back. Also don't think that, I think that next year students are going to have an opportunity to choose between hybrid and in person, is from what I understand in some of the counties and cities. So I'm ready for either way.
Great. Jordan, what about you?
The growth that we've made throughout this whole entire journey, I can say, has been amazing. I remember March 13th, we were all together. The students thought we were getting an additional spring break. And then a month after that, I had a student who was like, I wish for this, but I didn't wish for this. I didn't wish for what actually ended up becoming happening. And I was like, none of us want to ever be this far apart again. And so since then, I've been teaching synchronously as well through Zoom. And I think the biggest challenge has been motivating students throughout this time. We hear a lot about teacher difficulties and how we're stressed and we're tired, and we are. But to see the students kind of take that dip or that fall and just try to motivate them to just stand up, create a space. There's been a lot of not just like physical creation of dance, but just the things sometimes that you need for dance. Teaching my students how to make a dance space for yourself. This is about how much room you need. If you can do marches, if you can do jumping jacks, then you can still do this. You can still do this. We still got you. We're here for you. But basically, and then here we are a year later, and I can honestly say the students they're here. They may not mentally be here all the way, because we're now in a whole year of this, but they show up on Zoom and they come and they're accepting the challenge of the pandemic. So, but it's been pretty good.
Yeah, that's great.
The usual.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I kind of know what you mean. Yeah, thank you. Jennifer, what about you?
Let's see. At the time, like everybody said, Friday, March 13th was the day for us. At that time, actually, we thought it was only going to be 30 days, but the impact to us for 30 days was I had 6 Saturday programs going on with 140 students. I had 134 classrooms, artists in classrooms across about 5 different counties and library branches. And that impacted about 114 of my faculty. I had a professional development series that was supposed to happen, about 6 different professional development for classroom teachers. And we had school time shows, which means the performances on the maid stage where the kids get bussed in and they, see the shows. We had about 5 of those, which impacted 15 shows. So five 5 products, right? So 5 shows that run certain number of times. So it's 15 performances that impacted almost 9,000 students. And so we had about a day and a half to communicate to everybody. And we had to figure out too, who even had the capacity. We didn't know if people had devices and Wi-Fi. Newark, is a city. You just can't know that people are going to have it. And in fact, that wasn't the case. And we found later that there are about 7,000 students that had no access to any Wi-Fi. And that was a big challenge. The cities and the school districts were, of course, negotiating with cable companies in order to try and provide free Wi-Fi. And so that was a big deal. We had to make sure our families and our faculty even could do it. So that was some of the first challenges, but we pivoted, everybody stepped up, leaned in and dove in, and it was really important. What we did discover was because of the inequity of access to Wi-Fi, that we were partnering with the public television station because they had partnered with the Department of Education. Because what we did know is that while people don't have full access to Wi-Fi, almost everybody has a television. And because public television you don't need cable, had access to that. So across the state of New Jersey, there are about 300,000 people who don't have Wi-Fi, didn't have access to internet. So the DOE and the public network were working to get teachers, classroom teachers from all subject areas to just teach, go for it, for a full hour. Like that was a big lift on their part. And what we tried to do as they were trying to get the arts teachers in, we were providing small intersessionals, the spaces in between to give the breaks, kind of like a brain break for the kids with different activities. So we can get access so the kids can still have access to the arts because we know that's critical, always critical, but even more so now. So those are some of the main larger challenges. And much like Jordan has said too, that just making sure the kids could show up, right? And finding the way to be able to know that sometimes they just need to shut down. And also because, we're in people's homes now, right? You're in my home right now. And what does that mean for a faculty person? What does that mean for a student, depending on what their living situation is? And so there's that, and the just general trauma that globally we're enduring and how to manage that. So I have social workers that are embedded in my programs, have been for a while. And they continue to be a really effective and important component of our community. There's no stigma. They're just another set of adults who care. And in fact, they have great hip hop names. That's who the kids are, and that's who the social workers are. So it's just making sure everybody's gonna be safe and show up and be supportive.
Yeah, that's great. These are such great stories. It leads me to ask about several of you have mentioned the sort of the twin pandemics, multiple pandemics that we're going through, and we have obviously the public health pandemic. We also have the social and racial justice rising tide or surge of long overdue concern. And I just wonder how you're dealing with that simultaneously with this other pandemic, because one of the things that the coronavirus situation has enforced, as you've all mentioned, is isolation and solitude and the inability to connect in the ways that we're normally more fluent in. And yet here we are also confronted with an opportunity to make some real deep investigations and changes in the world at a time when we're not when we're not next to each other. So I wonder, does that become a subject in making the work or teaching the lesson? Or, I mean, how do we respond to that? Anybody? No particular order here, except Maura raised her hand. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that so much has been happening this year that, we want to have these conversations with the students, whether it's to reach out and, as you were just saying, to connect with students on a social and emotional level, and to address issues as they're arising, things that happened in January and November and in June, and to really try to make an impact, to make a change, and to be supportive. So one of the things that I did was I created a lesson called Design for Equity. And there's a professor in Louisiana who has a beautiful deck of cards that help teachers to approach different subjects and different stigmas in a way, and bring light to them, to the students, and then have conversations. So and then how to make a change, how to make an impact now, so that we can understand what's happening and be aware and intelligent, and make a difference in our school. So so we worked on that as a project, a graphic design project, to Design for Equity, and how to build up, communicate, and communicate equity across the campus. And the school is doing their own part too. They're really working on educating the students, the student body, and the faculty through literature and through understanding the history of our area in Arlington. And they did a really beautiful job of that the past semester. So
Well, thank you. And I'm going to remember the phrase "design for equity" because it's a beautiful phrase. Um, anybody else? Just
I was
thinking
going
about
to
this
say
moment. Yeah.
similarly, I had my students create, my older students, my middle school students, create a social, I called it the social dance project.
Hmm.
We've been talking about social dances since we came back, because I asked them, why do you think people are up and moving during a pandemic? And I got everything from, now they're between ages 11 and 14. So they gave me from they're bored to they need to move so they can be healthy. But then a lot of people said it was to get a message out so that you can
Yeah.
be viral, so you can be trending. And so I challenged them to create their own message and make it viral, make it trending, make something that you think is going to be impactful, that makes it stay out where you are right now during this time. So I got messages that were about Black Lives Matter, but I also got messages that were just about fun and being outdoors, things that they haven't been able to access now for over a year. They feel like they're lacking in the fun. And then I took a kind of a different stab at it as well. And I created some dance visuals because we're not able to be together for performances. I created 2 dance visuals for our Black History Month program. And I made one called Black Boy Joy, because sometimes it's about uplifting or recognizing kind of from like a different way, instead of always talking about what's wrong. It's sometimes about recognizing what's good, and it makes you feel good and gives you hope that way. And that included all of the faculty, as well as the young boys in our school, all of the male faculty, and it kind of just uplifted them. And then I made another dance visual called Rose Petals after hearing a song this summer. And I was like, I'm going to have the students give them choreography, and then I'm going to mesh it together with some images. And it was a little bit of a more, it had like a more somber feel, but it was a great balance between the two, so that we can recognize what's been going on, but then we can see that there's hope coming, and it lies in you.
Wow. That's that's actually just so inspiring to hear those messages, and to know that you are able to use dance in a way that is so profound. Yay! I want to see those things. I mean, really, that's fantastic. Jennifer, any thoughts about all that?
Yeah. I really appreciate Jordan's perspective about, often we talk about kids from a deficit place, and especially in an education space, right? It's what you don't know, so we have to teach you. But they come with stories and history and experience, and I prefer to look at and talk about it through an asset base. So part of what making a class where it's about what's important to the kids, or you're going to make your own play, then that makes the student the content expert. So your story walking into the space is the curriculum. You are the expert because you bring your story. So it's an empowering space just to lean into it. And I think that's really important to talk about. So I think that's really critical. And I think too, because we also in my department, we do professional development for classroom teachers. We started a new series called Social Justice Series, and which will be an ongoing thing. The institution I'm part of the Social Justice Task Force, which presents things separate, but in my department distinctly, we really created a social justice task series. So things like decolonizing the classroom, understanding the cipher and how that is about equity, or a lot of things from the Abolitionist Teachers Network. So if people don't know about that, I recommend you take a look at that. And Dr. Patina Love, just
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah.
So I just,
Oh, yeah.
there are places I think people can think about. So we wanted to also, the kids making work was just also carryover. It's always just been a thing we do. We just now do it in a pandemic. But the classroom teachers also need the skill sets in order to help just learn, okay, how do I do this? As I look at my curriculum, what is the canon that I am continually perpetuating, and why? And I think asking those questions of those who deliver the content is important. And also school systems and how they choose curriculum. How do you choose your textbooks? Who's making those choices of what's in and what's out? So things like that we talk about as well.
Yeah. Wow. Fantastic. I'm led to reflect. I don't know if anybody out there, or if you three have been able to see our recently premiered 2021 School of Dance Gala concert program. I don't know if that's crossed anybody's radar screen yet, but if not, this is plug-a-rama here because it's a beautiful program, and it actually says a lot about the things we were just talking about in many ways. It's a 45-minute show. It's available until April 9th on our Center for the Arts YouTube channel, and probably a couple of other venues, but for sure Center for the Arts YouTube. And the 45 minutes includes 2 beautiful dance performances, which we were able to film on stage in our concert hall. Mm-hmm. And even just the act of being able to come into the concert hall again and make work was emotionally overwhelming for everybody, the crew, the dancers. The 2 pieces are a world premiere piece called Running To and Toward by Hope Boykin, who's a former principal dancer with Alvin Ailey and is an incredible choreographer and spirit. And she was a guest artist in residence all last fall, and then stayed on, basically. She was virtual last fall, and she was virtual most of this spring, but she came down to finish this work for the concert. And it's a combination spoken word, dance, and music piece with her text and her reading of her text, which is amazing. And it addresses so many of just the image of running to and toward. It's about hope. It's about change. It's about movement toward something, not running from something, but really affirmatively running to and toward something. Really beautiful dancing and a beautiful piece. And then the second part of the program is an old favorite of the School of Dance, a piece that Susan Shields choreographed in 2002 called Sunlit Song, and has been revived several times at Mason and on several professional companies as well. And it's just a splash of yellow and color and light and lift and joy and motion and exuberance. And the point of all this is to say this. The point of all this is all of that. But getting to another aspect of it, there are moments in Sunlit Song where it's absolutely important for the dancers to partner physically and to hold hands. And we didn't think that we were going to be able to do that because of the pandemic, because we've been rehearsing, the dancers have been rehearsing in 10-foot squares, and with, it's been very carefully done, and we've had a very safe year. But to make that piece, so they got special permission with testing and protocols and so on, so that for a period of 2 weeks of the final rehearsals and the tapings, they were able to actually partner and touch. And it's electric when you see it, because you realize that you haven't seen anybody do that for so long. And I just listening to the dancers talk about it on this video, which you'll see a little bit of interview as well. It's really worth seeing. So that's a long plug, but a really beautiful program that addresses so much of what's going on in our world. I want to be mindful of our time, but I know we have questions coming in from the audience. And here is one. Has anyone noticed more or less support from administration or parents concerning the arts as integral to the educational experience. So I guess school administration on the one hand or parents on the other, more or less support about the arts in this climate. Everybody can take a crack at that one. Yes, Jordan.
I'll say the answer is yes. I think every day, though, we're presented with a different challenge from our admin and from our parents, because each day something is changing. What I finally was able, a hard pill to swallow was they don't know. I go to ask a question and the admin sometimes doesn't know. They're literally getting briefed on information hours or maybe like a day before they then give us the information. And then for parents, I think this new norm has been overwhelming. I know personally that I've seen some of my families are like, we have the hotspot, but there's still 7 of us in the house, or there's still 5 of us, or there's still 3 of us, or there's still 4 of us. And that is difficult, especially when you're trying to decide if I have one hotspot and the Wi-Fi and like multiple children in the family, what classes do they get in on? But I also think that what we faced in the pandemic is not new. Putting the arts in education and proving and saying that it is an integral part of education is something that we've been saying for years, but the fight just looked a little bit different virtually. It became, do I go to math if I have the time, or I'm tired of being and looking at a screen, so do I go to like sometimes where do I split my time because I'm getting a headache? But I have noticed it, but in reality, I think each day we're all just doing the best that we can do. So I don't think it's because they don't care. I think it's just figuring out all the puzzle pieces.
Great. Anybody else have a thought on that? That story reveals so many layers of of the situations that we find ourselves in. Anybody else have a comment on that?
Yeah, I would say definitely the parents are very supportive, even more so because they recognize the needed outlet for their students, their kids. I would say when we first shut down, what happened to the arts teachers was they became the aides to many of the core content areas. And that was a real challenge. So on a statewide level, we're looking at advocacy to go back to, let's make sure that doesn't happen as we start thinking about going in person up in Jersey. When we were virtual, then the classes still happened. It wasn't like you could relegate a teacher to be an aide somewhere else. And that's a definite challenge. We were finding too, because we went virtual, that our reach expanded enormously. In the classroom for PDs, we're global. We have international students now in my beginning band classes or my jazz classes because programs just shut down and decided not to or couldn't or didn't have the capability to continue to deliver arts programs. So I have students from Canada, Texas, all up and down the Eastern Seaboard. I mean, summer camp was full of people all over. And I because there just wasn't anything before. Everything just stopped and we kept going. So the parents, we got a lot. We had parents who were so grateful. We actually had unsolicited donations. So thank you to my faculty. Wow. I'm just going to say that. And to my staff who made it happen.
Yeah, that's terrific. Maria,
we had a similar situation where I believe the elementary schools are also teaching some of the core classes, are part of those classes. So very similar to New Jersey. The high school seems pretty normal as far as we teach our classes and our content and that's it. But I also have students that got stuck. They were traveling maybe on spring break and got stuck in the country they were in. And so I've been teaching to a student in Turkey and a student in Bolivia. And all of a sudden, Yorktown High School became a global international school, which is fantastic. But, I have to really empathize. I'm like, what time is it there? Or what time are you calling in? And really thinking about their situations, each individually, because they really do all have a unique situation. Um, it's been tough. I know it's been tough, and you can hear it and you can feel it. But the outs are a huge outlet for them, and you can see it in their art. It's really important for them to have that time to express it as well. And it didn't hold back our Scholastics art contest this year. We had lots of submissions and lots of awards. So it's something that had a silver. What was not a positive thing has had a silver lining to it.
Yeah,
and I think we
and
try to appreciate that.
That's a perfect segue to our last topic, and we only have a couple minutes on it. But you've all alluded to this, and I just want to unpack it for a second. And that is, what do we take forward? What are we learning that we can still do, or what are we learning to do better, or what techniques have we developed, or what programs? We talk about reach, that's extended. We talk about accessibility, which is something that sometimes the arts struggle with. What are you all thinking about, stuff that we're going to try to keep doing or adapt once we're back?
That's a big challenge, right? What is that?
I know. So I'm hoping for some answers so I can steal them.
Yeah, well, I think the poor schools are, the students are, I don't know why you'd have to have a snow day anymore, right? Because we'll just go virtual, which is kind of a bummer.
I'm keeping snow days.
Or sick day.
Yes, yeah. I would say, right? So I think that's the biggest challenge, because there's some things that work better in virtual, and there's some things that work better in real life and or in person. But we do know that as much as Maria said earlier, that there's some students who have thrived in this environment. And what do we do about that? And I've reached students in Canada. How am I going to keep helping them? I don't know the full answer to that. I do know there'll be some version of that in my department for certain. But again, we'll have to see budgetarily how that's going to manage. And also there's a whole thing about intellectual property and video, and it's complicated.
Oh, yes. That's why we didn't play the music under Jordan's beautiful piece.
Yes.
I think the use of technology does not stop. I can honestly say I was not using technology with students this young before. It was a challenge for me. I've learned so much during this pandemic with iMovie, Final Cut. I've also learned how to work TikTok better. But I think those things are things that they are evolution to the field. And we all know that if you don't grow, someone else will be growing and sprouting faster than you. So I think the use of technology has to stay involved in not just the arts, but in education, period, because we'll fall behind otherwise.
Yes, I could amend your remark and say I didn't really use technology at all until last March, and now I have a little camera. I mean, I still don't know what TikTok is, but I'm going to figure it out. Well, it is time for our toast. This is the ceremonial conclusion of Alumni Cocktails and Conversations with the Dean for season 2020 and 2021. And I will tell you that this is one of the things that we're going to carry forward into the post-pandemic world, because it has been an honor and a privilege for me to meet and re-meet alumni from many, many decades of George Mason's artistic history, and to see what everybody's doing. You've all just made me so proud as a dean, and so grateful as a citizen that you're out there in the world doing the work that you're doing. So I want to give you all a toast, and I also want to toast our listening audience for being so devoted to this program over the course of this season. And you can look for us to return in the fall with more cocktails and conversations, and maybe someday I'll actually have a cocktail. But cheers! There's one.
Cheers!
There, all right. Cheers. Thanks, everybody.
And be safe.
And good night, and be safe and stay well.